Hello everybody and welcome to this morning's HJ Goes Live session. Today's session is how to overcome bullying in hairdressing. I think this will be a session that will be highly valuable for certain people within the industry, and we're going to be speaking to Tegan Robertson, who will be sharing her own personal experiences and a new support group she started called Hairy Stories for Change. And we'll also be speaking to Marie Nivoot, who I'm sure she will correct me. Oh, I got it spot on apparently, which is fantastic. And she'll be sharing her standpoint from a salon manager and previous owner point of view. And then finally, we've got the amazing Louise Wood, who is a professional counsellor. You may well recognise her from her PR agency, but she's also a professional counsellor outside of the hair world. So she'll be sharing her professional standpoint and the resources that are available to all of you as well. And firstly, before we get going with this session, obviously it is a highly sensitive topic, and I just want to be clear that this session is not going to be about a bullying behaviour or a one-time event of bullying. This is about being a target of constant bullying within the workplace. So just to define, that's what we're going to be talking about. So perfect. Well, thank you so much to all three of you for joining us this morning. We're thrilled to have you with us, and this is obviously a very sensitive topic, so we're really pleased that you're willing to talk about it with us. And if we kind of go one by one, so hopefully we can, as an audience watching, we'll be able to get the most of all of your expertise. So if we kick off with Tegan, firstly, Tegan, do you want to maybe share with us how bullying has personally affected you in your career and how you've moved past negative incidents?
Yeah, of course. I think that one of the main issues within the hair industry is that we come into the hair industry fresh-faced, very young, a lot of the time very vulnerable, and we're in a new industry. And I think the bad thing is within the industry, they kind of have this, underlining level of this is just what you do. And I think especially when you're new to an industry, you don't have to kind of understand what you're going through, or you know how to process it.
I'm just going to stop you for a second there, Tegan. There's a little bit of noise, so maybe if you just stay as still as you can, hopefully it won't affect the microphone.
Okay, how is that now?
Yeah, go for it. If you're just a bobbing head with just your mouth moving, hopefully it'll be okay. I think any little bit of noise in it, we can just hear it against the mic. So sorry to stop you in your flow there.
Oh, no worries. So like I say, yeah, coming to the industry, very young, very vulnerable. It's hard to know what's right or what's wrong, and I think a lot of the time we kind of just take on the chin and that kind of thing, and it's only kind of years after you kind of take battering for a long time you realize, and it's even little things, it affects your physical well-being, your health. I know for a very long time I was I had no confidence. I don't know, I guess I was almost like a state of PTSD almost. And I know like past employees that I used to work with, they had similar things. And it does really affect almost every of your life, sadly. And not my personal experience, I think I overcome it. But sadly, some of the people I work with, they quit the industry, they kind of turn to drink, turn to drugs. It's a quite empowering thing, and I think it's something that we need to be more aware of in the industry.
Fantastic. Well, I guess that leads us nicely into the fact that you've started an initiative, haven't you, to help people with this kind of taboo subject, I guess, within the hairdressing industry. Do you want to maybe tell us a little bit about your Hairy Stories for Change initiative?
Yeah, so the Hairy Stories for Change thing, it came as almost a necessity, I suppose, because I was getting hundreds, if not thousands, of messages on my Instagram with people having experiences similar things. Sorry, is that me, Meg?
I think there might be some sort of issue there with your mic. I don't quite. Yeah, maybe if you, as I say, if you keep it as still as possible, hopefully it'll be okay.
All right. Oh, hello. Okay, so anyway, Hairy Stories for Change. I was getting so many messages every day. Is that still making noise? I don't think it's me.
Yeah, that's really strange. Oh, it stopped now, Tegan. So yeah, I think if you talk, hopefully keep it like that, and hopefully we'll be okay.
Alrighty. So I was getting so many thousands messages from people. And it got to a point where I realized that there was something that I need to do to, first of all, just deal with all these messages. And I felt almost guilty, the fact that people were sending me these really personal messages, and and they were disappearing within 24 hours, and I wasn't able to do anything or empower the people that were sending me these messages. So my idea was to start up an Instagram page. In 24 hours, I had 2,000 followers, and so it just grew into an overnight thing. But the sad thing is, like, I'm so happy that I have Louise in the room with us today, because I'm a hairdresser. I'm not really equipped to deal with all these really emotional, sensitive subjects, and I try the best I can. But it's kind of grown quicker than I imagined. So now I have this really big, amazing thing that I'm doing, but I'm kind of just trying to find my steps and to find my pace with it. So I'm happy that I've been able to speak with people, trained in this kind of thing.
Which is fantastic. And I guess you've kind of created a forum for something which people might feel embarrassed about, they may not want to talk about, but you've created this place that people can go to.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And like you say, obviously you're not a professional counsellor, but we've got the amazing Louise Wood, who will be able to answer some questions a bit later on as well. Fantastic, Tegan. And what advice would you give then to young hairdressers that might be in a toxic environment or experiencing what we're classing as bullying here, which is that constant bullying behaviour, not a one-time thing where a boss is having a bad day or something. This is like a constant bullying behaviour.
I think the key is to, first of all, know your rights. You need to know what your minimum wage is. You need to know, what is law, the way that you're being treated, or if it's against the law. I think that is sometimes key. And I guess the issue is that when you have an issue within an industry, sometimes the only person you can go to is your boss. But when your boss is the one that's kind of the issue in the environment, then it's really difficult. So I think, especially having things like Scary Stories, you're able to locate someone that can help and that you can reach out to, because I think that the problem is people are helpless and they have nowhere to turn to. There's no sort of HR industry. So I think sometimes you need to stick your neck out sometimes and know your worth, I suppose. Know that that's not how you should be treated. I mean, if you're crying at work every day, it's not it's not right.
It's not healthy, is it? No, definitely not.
Value your happiness.
Perfect. You just cut out a little bit there, Tegan, but I think that was great. What you just said there, know your worth and value your happiness. I think that's two very important points to get across. And Tegan, what's the Instagram page? What's the handle for it?
Instagram page is Hairy Stories for Change.
Hairy Stories for Change.
Something that I came up with within 2 seconds and then kind of just had to stick with it. So that's now.
Fantastic. Well, everyone should go and check that out, and I'm sure there'll be some inspiring stories on there, which is fantastic. And then if we move on to Marie, who is a salon manager and a previous owner, it'd be interesting to see it from your point of view, Marie. So how have bullying incidents affected your business, would you say? And what would be your standpoint from a manager perspective, I guess?
I think how I've chosen to be a salon owner and a salon manager has definitely come from my own experience as an assistant back in the late 80s. And, at that time, I don't know whether we would have called the behaviour bullying or we would have called it salon initiation, being sent to the bank for a long stand. And to the tool shop for a glass hammer, and those kind of things were kind of all part of, your apprenticeship. And at the time, you kind of know that behaviour is actually not acceptable. But you kind of go, I want this job and I want to be a hairdresser. Your passion for wanting to be in the industry kind of outweighs the behaviour of some, I'm going to say. And I kind of always knew that if I ever got to that position, I wouldn't treat people like that. I wouldn't, be in that space of belittling somebody, because the only way you can truly build somebody up is encouraging them and making them want to be the best version of themselves for their career. And I think that's massively important. So I have to say and be 100% transparent here. I, in the workplace and schools, suffered with some bullying. Then at some points, especially as I became the senior assistant or senior junior and size, I probably imitated those patterns of behavior that I had. So I'm quite, there will be people in my career who have said, oh, you were a bit of a bully, or you were very firm, or you were very this. And it's not until you educate yourself on the aspects of behavior within the workplace. And, you know, hairdressing is a very unique industry. We are, you know, madly creative, you know, and ambitious, and, you know, we've got all these different, you know, elements to being in the hairdressing industry, that it's then to put on, you know, behavioural, you know, Louise will know in far better terminology than myself, of how to behave, how to nurture, how to support, how to not be fearful of somebody who has more passion and more talent and more energy than you. Having all that contained and do your working day in the salon is really massive. So when I got, I think, my first couple of roles as a manager, I probably, if I was being reviewed now, I probably wouldn't get a great review. But then in time you learn how to behave, you learn how to support people, you learn how to get the very best of them through nurturing, encouragement and support. So definitely for myself, I've seen a change in behavior over the 30 years. And there are some people who have, you know, as creatives, if there's a new technique coming out, we go, oh, there's balayage coming out, or there's air touch blow drying, or this, you go on a workshop. And I think some people in those management and ownership roles don't go and say, go and learn about behavior and in the workplace to identify bullying. So I must admit, I actually educated myself up on recognizing bullying, recognizing the symptoms. So if you're a manager in a salon, you may have interviewed the most amazing assistant and you think, this assistant is amazing, and all of a sudden all the traits that you saw in this assistant, bubbly, ambitious, creative, flair, in the workplace, if they're being bullied by somebody, that assistant starts to maybe not perform as the same, doesn't have the same zest or personality. And, you know, they'll be taking the odd sick day here, and, you know, their shoulders will be slouched, they'll be spending more time in the dispensary.
You've just frozen for me there, or not?
Oh, am I back?
You just, yeah, you're back, that's fine. I think it might have been my connection, actually.
Yeah.
So I think
so the assistant might be shying away from the salon floor, be spending more time in the dispensary, be spending, you know, half an hour in the toilet, being crippled from a throwaway comment, you know. And it's recognizing that pattern of behavior from this you know, amazing character. You've got to be able to recognize the signs of bullying, but you can't recognize those unless you have educated yourself on how to recognize bullying in the workplace and then what to do about it. It's that point where you step in and you bring that assistant in or that member of staff and go, come on, what's wrong? We need to talk. There has to be open avenues within that salon that this can be resolved, this behavior. You know, and it's very important for every salon to have a policy on bullying, on the culture of behavior in a salon. And I don't care whether that's a salon with 2 people in it or a salon with 200 employees or 400 employees. There has to be, you know, as we're so up on policies, how to look after our clients. But those bullying policies and how to recognise it need to be there for our youth, because we don't want amazing people leaving the industry.
No, that's a fantastic point, Marie. And I think another point that you got across there, which I thought is really fantastic, was the fact that often it can be a learned behaviour. If you've only ever had a manager who has displayed bullying tendencies, and that's who you're learning to become a manager from, you might well adapt those tendencies without realizing it. So it's about looking inwards as well.
Nobody is born cruel or mean. It is, you know, a set of circumstances that somebody behaves in that. And I'm sure Louise will have, you know, a breadth of experience on that. Sorry, did you lose me a bit?
Just a little bit, but we can still hear you. We can't see your lovely face, but we can hear you. Yeah.
You know, so, you know, it's one of those things. And I think Tegan, the fact that you've made this kind of olive branch for people, that if they're in a situation where it is their salon owner and there is nowhere to go, that there is somewhere to go, you know, and it takes somebody very brave to go, actually, how you're talking to me, treating me is making me feel like this, you know. So it's I think definitely, I think schools are addressing it a lot more now. Yeah. And hopefully our youth, you know, like we were just so grateful back in the day that if somebody else was getting, you know, picked on, bullied, that it wasn't ours. You know, we didn't speak up, which made us equally a part of the problem. But we were relieved.
The main issue is it's a taught behaviour. And I remember being an assistant and people were like, yeah, well, when you're a stylist, you can treat people like this. And I think almost you get battered so much that it does harden you, and you get very desensitized to this in the hair industry. Little things like, yeah, when I was assistant, I used to scrub the floor with a toothbrush. That's terrible that you had to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Necessary, and it's part of dehumanizing people and battering people down to make yourself feel more important. This is why something needs to change. Fundamental basis of a lot of training is based around bullying.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Tegan. And I hope that we have got some salon managers who will tune into this session as well. So Marie, could you maybe share any advice you could give to salon managers who've had to deal with bullying or conflicts within their team?
Yeah, I think definitely, I think as a salon manager, you have to, you know, you have to write down a procedure, you know, but you have to, you know, in staff meetings all the time, we're so busy on, you know, keeping up with techniques, keeping up with figures and all the other aspects. I think bullying and talking about it in your staff meetings, in your and it's such a horrible word, bullying now. To be called a bully, I think is the worst thing. But really, it's about behaviour. It's about it's you know, because it's a relationship within the salon. Manager, stylist, assistant, front of house. You know, you're all a bunch of people in the same space, there for the same reason. And I think the behaviour, you should literally, that should be in a staff meeting, and everyone should put in, how do you want to behave? Because life is like a mirror, you know, and if you're going to treat people with kindness, respect and boundaries, then if you create that together, then you have created your culture of how you choose to behave. But in that same space, and you do that staff meeting, that you have to be open to say, well, actually, I don't like it when you say that. I don't like it when you cut me off. I don't like it when you speak to me like that in front of a client, a stylist. You know, you have to create your behavioural culture together. And I think that's as important as keeping up with the latest techniques. It's as important as targets, figures, shows, shoots, you know, that creating that behavioural culture of how you want to behave is then sets a precedent for your team, and then everybody knew who's coming, going, you know, what, you know, once every 2 weeks we have a, how are we all doing? I used to say to my team, at some point you're going to wear the, I can't say the word, the not very nice hat. Have you not been very nice today? Because we don't know what's happened in that person's day outside of the salon. Yeah. You know, so there might be somebody who's really struggling with mental health, abuse, homelessness, you name it. There's so, you know, all these different factors people are coping with in their own lives. Then they come into the salon and that emotion, energy has to pour out somewhere. And so, you know, it's okay to come into work and go, do you know what? You know, my 12 hours since I was last here, this and this has happened to me. I'm emotionally, the bucket is empty, and I will explode today, or this will happen. And but it's creating that culture within your salon to have that level of honesty and openness about your emotions and about how you're going to choose to deal with them. And there's many a time when I've seen somebody come into the salon, I can see how fragile they are, and I've gone, you need to go home. Yeah, you need to have a mental health day, whatever's going on, you know.
Well, that's great, Marie. I think a lot of salon managers can learn from what you're putting in place, and I think this is a fantastic place for us to bring in the amazing Louise Wood, who's a professional counsellor, to be able to explain to us. I guess either you could be a salon manager, you could be a member of the team. What signs should you be looking out for amongst your team, amongst your colleagues, as to whether somebody is being treated unfairly, or is, you know, there is a point where you should be stepping in and it is a bullying behaviour as opposed to just a one-off incident?
I think one of the things that Marie actually touched on earlier was probably one of the key points. It's looking for a change in somebody, you know, somebody who perhaps was more confident, they were perhaps more lively, they shared a joke and they've become quiet, so the effect of ongoing bullying is that people become isolated, they feel excluded, they feel rejected, they feel belittled, demeaned. So actually, as this goes on, and it's a persistent, as you said at the top of the conversation, Laura, is that bullying is an aggressive, persistent act of either verbal or physical or mental onslaught. So it attacks lots of parts of your being. And I think when you are being persistently bullied, we talk about feelings. We say, oh, well, you know, I feel this, but actually it's far bigger than feelings, because it has a physical effect on you. It'll affect your actual body will feel different. You'll carry stress. You might feel, well, you may feel righteous anger. You'll perhaps have tummy upsets, diarrhea. You know, your whole system responds to stress, and in different ways, which is why, you know, obviously on something like this, you can't go into lots of detail, but actually, if your body is feeling different, so if the person who's feeling bullied is feeling different, they will know it from their whole system, their physical, their emotions, they'll feel fearful. Bullies work by trying to make people feel less than. So it's a power imbalance. It's always a power imbalance, bullying. It'll be somebody who's wanting to exert a position of authority or power over somebody else. We understand from research that it is often from childhood patterns. It perhaps has been reinforced by bullying at school, from teachers, perhaps from people in authority. So, you know, it's not a short story, but the thing is, when you're being bullied, it is a very quick highway back to whatever you've experienced. So you're not operating out of your strong, you know, perhaps you've joined feeling, oh, I'm really confident and hopeful and all those lovely things. And as Tegan said, you know, a lot of people coming into hairdressing are really young. They don't have experience of perhaps operating as a grown-up in a work situation, of being able to gently demand different ways of being in relationship. That takes adulthood, you know, and when you're a teenager or a young adult, you're learning those things. So it's really hard to take a stand against a bully, because they make you feel on the outside. And bullies are often very manipulative. So bullying isn't always seen, and that's really hard to call out. So it's very hard, to go back to your question, to spot it, because it's underground, it picks away at people. So the clues that you really can work with are, is it changing somebody's behavior? Have they gone really quiet? Are they isolated? Are they disappearing a lot? And I think then it is incumbent on, you know, to be a trustworthy management system, a trustworthy business leader, the owner is on you and on colleagues in the business. It's not just the business leader, because it could be that it comes from the leader. So actually are you going to be a bystander? Do you watch that happen to your friend or somebody who came in who's younger than you? Do you see it happen and you're silent? Actually, that makes you a bully too. You know, you're complicit in the bullying. And sorry, going on and on and on.
That's a very great point there, Louise. And I guess if anyone is tuning in who is being bullied and they've seen this session and thinking, oh God, this is for me because I don't quite know what to do. Do you have any advice for coping mechanisms for people that are in that moment or in that situation? And obviously it is a job at the end of the day, so they might not be able to just leave. Do you have any advice for what somebody can do to help in the moment, if you see what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I can give a very general, broad advice, obviously, because I think people have such different responses. And actually, if you're feeling at an all-time low and you can barely speak, for me to say, oh, use your voice, speak up, they can't. They're not online in that conversation. They're operating out of fear and anxiety. And people have different responses in fearful and anxious, anxiety-provoking circumstances. So you'll probably operate out of your fight, flight or fright response. And for somebody who sorry, before I even start that, I would say you always have a choice. Even if you don't think you've got a choice, you have little choices in things. And I think if you're talking about something in terms of what, if you feel really unsafe and you're going to have a sort of massive catastrophic breakdown, well, you leave. It's very clear. Those, you know, when something's terrible, the decisions take over for themselves. I think when you're in the middle and it's kind of like, well, I can kind of deal with it, I can kind of function with it, well, I'm nearly qualified, should I just suck it up? I think but those are also choices. So I think don't, actually value those choices. And I think out of knowing you've got a choice, you have a strength. And but I would say if you're in a toxically bullying situation, I would get out, because I don't think anything is worth the cost. I mean, I've worked with clients in the past who've been in very serious workplace bullying circumstances, and sometimes your body literally takes over. Somebody I worked with had such a strong freeze reaction. She literally collapsed and she couldn't walk for weeks. Her body just said, well, you can't take me out of it, so I'm going to take you out of it. And there was an override there. So but I think if we're talking in the middle area, I would try to prepare. If I were in a situation where I felt I was being bullied, I would, and I could function in that to a degree, I would try and prepare some phrases that I've got in my back pocket ready. You know the sort of things they're going to do, you know the kind of things they're going to say. So I would do things like, okay, if I need to really get out of a situation, what I might have prepared is, I'm going to need to take 5 minutes. I'm sorry, that might not seem appropriate, but I'm just going to go away for 5 minutes and I will come back to this conversation. So you're saying, I need to get out. I will come back. That's the grown-up thing. You're a professional. I'm going to come back. You might get a verbal abuse after that. They might say, well, we don't want you back. It's like, well, I think it's really important to finish this conversation. Let me know when you would like to do that. So just hold in a little way. You're not fighting. You're not shrieking. You're holding your ground, but you're actually getting out. That's your flight, response. And I think if your instinct is, I want to bite back, I would never match anger with anger. I think if you shame the shamer publicly, it nearly always gets worse. It doesn't change their behavior. It might make you feel empowered for a second and it will come back to probably hit you even harder. I would probably try to say something in a strong tone. So I would match their intensity of voice. So if they're shouting, I would say, please do not shout at me. I would really like to hear what you're saying, but when you're talking to me like this, I cannot hear it. So let me know what you need from me now. And just, it's almost we're not going to have a slanging match here, but I'm going to put a line in the sand. I think those are the sorts of things I would suggest. I mean, if I was sitting talking to somebody in a counselling therapeutic, then we'd work through what was going on for them and how they might respond. But I think if you can have something, you'll get out of jail card statements, behaviours. And I think you also need to go away and think, what's my cutoff point here? You make a contract with yourself to say, how much worse can I allow it to get? What am I prepared to deal with? And beyond that point, I'm out. And I think you need to put those boundaries in for yourself.
Fantastic. And do you think it's important, Louise, to have a support network around you, maybe outside of the workplace?
It's incredibly important to, if you can, I mean, what I would do is, I think what you're doing too, that's brilliant, you know, having a place where people can speak. I think if you feel like you haven't been heard, you need to go somewhere where you feel safe enough to say the thing, where other people show you warmth and compassion. And I think that is incredibly healing when you're heard, even if nobody has the answer. It's like, I get that this is absolutely awful for you, but what I see in front of me is a really genuinely lovely person. If you have some upbuild coming back from people, these are the things that heal you. And I would seek out positive affirmations from friends, you know, people you trust, to say, look, I'm feeling really low, you know, tell me the things about me that you really value. Seek it out, actually ask for it, because you will have somebody in your life that can reassure you. And a lot of the things that the bullies sort of lies, in a way, become your truth. It's like, I'm wearing what you've said now. I think I'm a bad person, I'm a this, I'm a that. And actually, sometimes you need to challenge those things and sort of find evidence to the contrary through the people that love you and care for you. Friends, if you can find a supporter in the workplace, obviously that's your, you know, a fantastic thing. But outside of it, I would be joining a group. I'd join a group like that if you can afford to, or if you can find some voluntary counselling. That sort of might be a really safe place that you can explore maybe how you've got there and what else is going on in your life, and how you can build your resilience, and all these things, that the words that we hear, but they're not so easy to do. You know, it's not like, well, get positive, you know, put a smile on your face. It's far deeper than that. And I think you need people to hear your pain, and then from that you can rebuild. Yeah.
Are there any resources or help available that you would specifically recommend, Louise?
I mean, I think probably, I mean, there's a scale of resource. I think if you can find resource in your workplace, if you can find a manager that you can go to, if the bullying isn't coming from the leadership team, then clearly you go back. I mean, somebody like Marie, you know, when you were talking about, I just thought, wow, when you said, I haven't always been this way, that shows such a sense of kind of imperfection and vulnerability. And so you would be the sort of person that would be exactly the person that could be turned to. You know, this is the kind of thing we need. We need people that say, you know, I'm not perfect, I haven't got it all right, and I might want to make repair for that. But actually having somebody like you in the workplace would be, you know, fantastic. But in reality, that isn't probably what people are experiencing who are experiencing bullying, because bullying is often, the tone for bullying is set from the leadership. Often, you know, it's not always, but it is often coming from top down, or it's in an organization that just kind of says, oh, I don't want to get involved with it, you know, oh, I'm not getting it. It's like a school playground, they can sort it out themselves. That isn't really an appropriate way to, you know, you have to call out inappropriate behavior, and then your team trust you. It's building up trust.
Exactly. What could a salon manager do if the bullying that's happening is amongst the team? If somebody is being picked on and it's the team picking on somebody, what sort of, or somebody within the team picking on them, what could the salon manager do to try and
I think if you go to a point that Marie talked about earlier, where you're almost coming up with a team contract at the beginning, when I would recommend to any business that you set out your culture and your values when people come in. I mean, and that should include how we treat each other, how we speak to each other, the tasks that I expect you to do. It's the whole thing. And I think if you set that out, and it doesn't all have to be done by committee. It's like, well, these are the values of the business, and if this goes wrong, this is where you can be signposted. And I think it's really important in a business, probably in hairdressing. I don't know if this is me in emails, sorry if it is. But I think having a buddying system, putting in somebody who's an other supporter. So it's like, it gives you another line to management in a way. It's like you're not just on your own. You've got somebody who's been assigned as your person to go to if you've got problems or issues or something's not working. Because actually, I think when you've got bullying, you need somebody else to stand alongside you. And often in this sort of bullying circle, you've got sort of enforcers, the people who encourage bullying. You've got your defenders, the ones who are trying to stop it. And then you've got a whole heap of bystanders who basically do nothing. And I think if you can create a system where you're saying that is not acceptable, if you see something, I'm giving you permission to call it out. And I'd like this to be the way you do it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's your ideal business structure. So, and it gives people courage to know that they won't be belittled further by going and talking about it. But I think you do have to name stuff that's going on, and be careful with the labels, because not everything's bullying. Some of it's just really shitty behaviour, and it's just poor management. It isn't bullying. I think if we use the word bullying too often, it loses its power, because bullying is a toxic relationship. And if you're in a persistently bullying relationship, I would say you have to get out of it. You know, there's no badge of honour staying in.
No, that's fantastic, Louise. We've actually had a question come in saying from Relly Holden saying, what are the get out of jail cards to exit out of the behaviour?
I think your get out of jail cards are whatever your line in the sand is, and only you, perhaps with a friend, with somebody else, you can sit and say, well, how far can I push this? If I need the job, you know, your financial position will influence whether you need the job, your all sorts of other things. Life issues will influence your get out of jail cards. But I think you have to have, I mean, if it were me, I would have my sort of point that I wouldn't go beyond is somebody belittling me in front of somebody. So my get out of jail card would be, not in that circumstance, I wouldn't call them out there and then, but afterwards I would say, I'm really happy to hear your feedback. Well, not really happy, but I will hear your feedback and I'll try not to be defensive about it. But please do not do that to me ever again in front of people. So please, can we sit down now and talk about the issues that you raised? That's quite a powerful response, and the bullies will really not like it, because what they're trying to do is subjugate you. And usually somebody who's being bullied is submissive. People who, you know, that's the power imbalance, really. So I think your get out of jail card has to come out of your confidence level at the time. You know, there isn't a right or wrong get out of jail card. It's whatever you feel you can deliver. But certainly don't put yourself under stress thinking, oh, I should be doing this better. It's like, do the best you can in the circumstance you're in. And just try some. I'd try them out. I mean, when I'm not talking about bullying necessarily, but if I'm going into something that's a difficult situation, I'll practice my coming in phrase and my exit phrase. And then I know I've got a phrase at the end of it that's like, this has been really valuable. I've got lots to think about. Could we have another meeting in a week or two where I can talk about it? And that's my end thing. It's like, okay, I know I've got that. So if I really am up against the wall, I've got my ending phrase here, if that's helpful.
Definitely. And do you think it's wise for people that aren't quite at the end of their tether, but they're starting to get that way, to start coming up with an exit plan?
Yeah, I think absolutely have an exit
structured
plan.
A structured way to leave, rather than kind of being left without a job. And
I think so, because I think if you're the one making the decision, you're always going to feel better about the ending. I'm a real big fan of trying to make the ending the best it can be. And I know that sounds a bit la la land when you're in a bullying situation, and you cannot take responsibility for how the other person behaves, but you can take responsibility for how you behave. Nobody else has control over how you behave. And that's another one of your choices. And I do think those are really important, because they make you feel stronger. It's like, you know, they are the things that I think they're upbuilding, actually. I think it's important. Yeah.
Well, we've had something come in which will be for all of you, actually. Stephanie has said she believes it's the celebrity effect. Managers are made to feel like they're amazing, which of course they can be amazing, but this has an effect on them and it gives them a sense of power. And they then think it's okay to treat people in a rubbish way because they're important or special or amazing or better than others. And she says she believes that people from the top right the way through to the bottom need to be more humble.
Well, it's only a title at the end of the day, isn't it? And I suppose it's how that person perceives that title when they are given it. But in any company's training, how to manage a team should also be how to manage the behaviour of the manager towards their team. I think that's massively important. And so anybody who has a manager's role has been given it by either the salon owner or a company, and they should be taught how to manage. And manage in no way means belittle or make somebody feel bad in their work environment whatsoever. You have to have that element of understanding human behavior and incorporating that into your management style to leave people feel empowered and encouraged. And so therefore the responsibility of whoever's given that manager their role should, in their training, should have that how you will choose to then treat that company's employees, for sure.
And it does come down to hierarchy, and sadly that is kind of how salons a lot in the UK, is that you have like this of you're almost untouchable when you are a manager or the owner, and I guess that is kind of like a thing. And like you say, no one's perfect, and the main thing is if everyone is accountable for their actions, it all starts with you. I think maybe building a salon environment where you're always progressing and always not about being called out, but I think it's really important to be able to say what you're doing is wrong, and to have a safe space where everyone is always willing to progress and always willing to be like, that wasn't right of me, and just wanting to do better.
Yeah, I think actually this is perhaps what you're talking about, Tiga, but it's almost like building into a business a sort of a 360 feedback where actually the manager is, I have worked with businesses where they regularly put in feedback systems where the manager's fed back, the middle person's fed back, somebody underneath feeds them back, somebody on top feeds them back, everybody gives feedback. So an apprentice can say, I found that a really useful session. Actually, I would have liked to have been a bit more hands-on. I felt when you dived in and took over the hair, it made me feel a little bit like I couldn't do it. So perhaps you could just let me make the mistake and talk me through it. It gives permission for in fact, it's not just permission, it's a requirement. It's like that's team growth. And actually, if you've got a system like that, it's great. You still have your hierarchy. I mean, you've still got senior people, you've still got people with more experience and what have you. But actually, it's very invitational to iron out some of those issues early on, and that's what organisations can put in to sort of sidestep what can become a very top-down, power-driven environment.
Definitely, fantastic. And I guess the world has changed, hasn't it? Because obviously back years ago there might have been plenty of apprentices, and managers knew if they made one apprentice cry and they left, they could get another one. But these days apprentices are a rare breed, and managers should be grateful to have them and love them and nurture them and nourish them.
It will be the forward-thinking manager. Today is, I think we live in a culture of review. Everybody gets reviewed. And I think it's very important that managers and salon business owners send a review sheet to their team, their employees. Hey, you're giving 100%. You're doing really well. How am I doing? It's really important that you ask that question. Show me. Nobody is perfect. There is no perfect salon owner. There is no perfect manager. And it takes that team mentality, and especially somebody who's quite transparent and human, to go, hey, I'm going to make these mistakes. What are they? So we can work together to, create the best creative space we can for each other. You go for a car ride now, the driver gets a review, the passenger gets a review, everybody. to review. So why isn't it the salon owner can reach out to their team and go, hey, this month, where did I go wrong? What can I do better to make our space better?
I think that's a really good point, Marie. And I think the other thing is, you know, don't forget to tell your manager when they get it right. You know, so there are some, I mean, I think we've talked about what goes wrong in business, and there is an awful lot that goes right. I know some amazing salons and teams. I know they, you know, there's one that's local to us who I would just say is one of the most nurturing, beautiful places. They can be tough management. Their job is to bring people on. That isn't bullying. That's, you know, that's a very different thing. And I think there are some great places to work. And I think, you know, part of the system of change is to let people know when they've really got it right, you know, almost manage up. But that comes out of a position of strength. And if you're being bullied, there is very little chance you're going to feel able to do that. You know, coming back to what we were talking about, you know, you feel very disabled, really. Yeah.
Definitely. Well, I think that review is a great idea. Would you make that anonymous so that the team feel like they can give their honest opinions for that?
The feedback thing I was talking about, or
yeah.
Marie's?
A bit of both, really, I guess. Would you make them anonymous, or kind of would you have the team?
Probably both.
Yeah,
I'd probably create a space to enable both, because people are very monitored of what they will say, in fear of, you know, not being able to speak their truth. So I'd probably create a space for both.
Fantastic. We are running out of time. We've actually gone way over time on this, I have to say, but there's been so much to talk about. It seemed a shame to cut it short, really. But I guess before we do wrap up, would any of you like to share any final words of wisdom on this topic, on how to overcome bullying within the hairdressing workplace?
I would just like, oh, sorry.
So we'll do Marie and then Tegan. Yeah. Or Tegan, do you want to go first?
Okay, perfect. Thank you. For me, it was just, take accountability. And I think when you first open yourself up, that's when you learn. You can't, I think, expect others to change if you're not willing to change. And I think the key is to be vulnerable and to always want to do better. I think it's very easy when it's someone else's problem. Even if you're watching this and you're not getting bullied, is being aware if other people are getting bullied. And I think always be an advocate and just try to make every environment a better environment for not just you, but the people around you. And that's it.
Oh, lovely. Thank you very much, Tegan. And Marie, did you have something you wanted to say as well?
I would just say, for all employees and managers and salon owners, you know, set out your own non-negotiables, how you want to be treated, and implement that, and don't be frightened to speak your truth.
Yeah. And I think my word on it would just, to leaders, I think, be a courageous and a compassionate leader that is ready to show vulnerability and imperfection. And that will mean that the rest of your team can do that too. And I think that is where real strength and unity lies, in imperfection and vulnerability.
Fantastic. Well, this has been a truly inspirational session. I do hope that those of you watching have learned a lot, whether you are unfortunately being bullied or you are a manager and you want to try and make a positive change. I'm sure all three of our amazing ladies that are on this session would be happy for you to get in contact with them after if you do have any other questions. And obviously you're more than welcome to join Tegan's Hairy Stories for Change on Instagram as well, which is an open forum. And we hope this has been really useful. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Laura. Here's to a positive end of 2020.
Absolutely.
Take care, everyone. Bye.